The jungle of Caldera 3 did not just grow. It suffocated. It was a riot of biology gone mad, a vertical ocean of emerald and midnight blue where sunlight went to die, strangled by a canopy so thick it felt less like trees and more like a ceiling of rotting velvet. Eli Navarro swung his machete with the mechanical rhythm of a man who had stopped caring about the sweat stinging his eyes an hour ago. The blade bit into a stalk of rubbery, purple vine, severing it with a wet snap that echoed too loudly in the humid air. He paused, wiping his forehead with the back of a grime-streaked glove, and checked his wrist comp. The holographic display flickered, then spun in a lazy, mocking circle. Piece of junk, Eli thought, tapping the screen hard enough to bruise his finger. According to the map, he was standing in the middle of a perfectly flat savanna 3 miles east of the colony perimeter. According to his eyes, he was chest-deep in ferns that smelled like sulfur and cinnamon, staring up at trees that scraped the stratosphere. This was the ghost zone. That was what the miners back at the canteen called it, usually after 3 or 4 synthetic beers. Surveyors went in, and they came back with scrambled hard drives and stories about shadows that moved when you were not looking. Or they did not come back at all. Eli was not a miner. He was a scout, a former corporal in the United Earth Marines who had traded being shot at for being eaten by bugs. He needed the credits. The colony administration paid a premium for mapping this sector, and Eli had a tab at the supply depot that was starting to look like a phone number. He pushed forward. The ground beneath his boots felt spongy, almost recoil-reactive, pushing back against his weight with a subtle spring. The air grew heavier, charged with static that made the hair on his arm stand up. It was late afternoon, but down here in the deep shade, the bioluminescence was already waking up. Spores the size of marbles drifted past his face, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic blue light, moving against the wind. Something was wrong with the sound. The screech of the arboreal monkeys and the chitter of the insect swarms seemed to be coming from the wrong direction, echoing from behind him even as he saw the creatures ahead. Eli stopped. He checked his compass again. The needle was not just spinning, it was vibrating, humming against the glass casing. Then he felt it. It started as a vibration in his teeth, a low-frequency thrum that rolled through the jungle floor like a subterranean heartbeat. It was not mechanical. It felt ancient. It felt like the ground itself was breathing. He looked down at his boots. The moss around his feet was arranging itself. It was a subtle shift, a slow creep of green fibers turning in unison, pointing deeper into the brush. I am hallucinating. Eli decided, heat stroke, dehydration. I am going to pass out, and a 6-legged jaguar is going to turn me into lunch. But he did not turn back. He could not. It was a sensation he had not felt since the war, a magnetic pull in his gut that bypassed his brain entirely. It was the instinct that told you to duck a second before the sniper fired. It was the feeling of being watched, but not with malice. He was being invited. He sheathed the machete. He did not need it anymore. As he stepped forward, the tangle of vines that had been fighting him for miles seemed to recoil, curling back to reveal a narrow, unobstructed path. The gravity shifted. For a dizzying second, Eli felt weightless, his stomach lurching into his throat before the world slammed back down with double intensity. The air shimmered. He saw shapes between the trees, geometry that made no sense, angles that looked sharp enough to cut the eye, fading in and out of existence like a bad signal. Time stretched. A single step took an eternity. The next step happened before he had even decided to take it. The thrumming grew louder, a harmonious resonance that drowned out the jungle noise until it was the only sound in the universe. Eli pushed through a final curtain of weeping moss, expecting to hit a wall of rock or a cliff face. Instead, The world opened up. He stumbled into a clearing that defied every law of ecology on the planet. It was a perfect circle of silence. The towering trees formed a high wall around the perimeter, leaning in as if bowing to the center. The ground here was not mud, but a carpet of soft silver grass that glowed with its own faint light. And in the center, hovering 3 feet off the ground, was the ghost. It was a starship, but calling it a machine felt like an insult. It looked grown. The hull was the color of polished bone and dark, rich loam, sweeping in curves that mimicked the structure of a ribcage or the veins of a leaf. It was massive, easily the size of a Corvette-class frigate, but it had no rivets, no seams, no thruster burns. Veins of sapphire light pulsed beneath the surface of the hull, beating in time with the rhythm Eli had felt in the ground. It was also only half there. The edges of the ship were translucent, blurring into the background of the trees behind it. It was phased, caught somewhere between reality and a camouflage frequency. Eli stood frozen, his breath caught in his lungs. This was not colonial tech. This was not even military tech. This was something else entirely. He took a step forward. The silence in the clearing was absolute. No birds, no wind, just the hum of the ship. He walked until he was standing right beneath the curving flank of the hull. It radiated a dry, pleasant warmth. Without thinking, driven by that same inexplicable pull, Eli reached out. His hand should have passed through the phased hull. He braced himself for the tingle of an energy field. But the moment his fingertips brushed the air inches from the surface, the world snapped. A shockwave of sound, like a thunderclap trapped in a bottle, blasted outward. The leaves on the perimeter trees trembled violently. Birds exploded from the canopy in a terrified cloud. The ship solidified instantly, snapping from a ghostly transparency to a solid, undeniable reality. The bone-white hull darkened to a pearlescent gray, and the blue veins flared bright enough to cast shadows. A section of the hull, smooth and unbroken a second ago, dilated. It opened like an iris. Layers of organic armor spiral retracting to reveal a dark interior. A ramp extended, touching the silver grass with a silent grace. Eli stumbled back, his hand dropping to the stun baton on his hip, a useless gesture against a starship. But old habits died hard. Someone was walking down the ramp. She moved with a fluidity that made human movement look jerky and clumsy. She was tall, taller than Eli, with limbs that were long and elegant. She wore a bodysuit that looked like it was woven from the same material as the ship, dark and matte, hugging a frame that was powerful and lean. But it was her face that stopped Eli's heart. Her skin was pale violet, almost translucent in the twilight, marked with intricate, luminous geometric patterns that traced her high cheekbones and vanished into her hairline. Her hair was dark, braided in complex, gravity-defying loops that suggested a culture of immense discipline. And her eyes, they were molten gold, lacking whites, glowing with an internal fire that pinned Eli to the spot. She held a weapon. It was a long, slender spear made of a silvery metal that hummed. The tip was not a blade, but a focused point of crackling plasma. She stopped at the bottom of the ramp, 10 feet from him. She leveled the spear at his chest. Her expression was not angry, and it was confused. It was the look of a queen who had found a muddy, stray dog in her throne room. She spoke, and her voice was a low contralto, heavily accented but perfectly understandable. "You shouldn't be here." The warning hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Eli blinked. The adrenaline was screaming at him to run, but the sheer absurdity of the moment held him fast. He looked at the spear, then at the golden eyes of the alien woman, then at his own dirty gloves. He slowly raised his hands, palms open. "Well," Eli said, his voice cracking slightly before he found his rhythm. I realized I took a wrong turn at the big fern back there. I didn't mean to crash a very exclusive campsite. The woman's brow furrowed. The glowing markings on her face flared slightly brighter. Campsite, she repeated, tasting the word as if it were foreign and unpleasant. You are trespassing on a sovereign vessel of the Varan Dominion. Varan, Eli echoed. He knew that name. Everyone on the frontier knew that name. It was the boogeyman in the dark, the distant empire that the colonial news feeds warned about, the hostile power. He swallowed hard. Right, the Varan. Okay, look, I'm just a scout. I'm mapping the area. I didn't see any no trespassing signs. Maybe they got eaten by the vines. The woman did not lower the spear. Mapping, she said coldly. For whom? The Helix Corporation? She took a step closer. The plasma tip was now dangerously close to his jacket. Suddenly, a voice spoke from the air itself. It was cool, synthetic, and sounded like wind chimes filtered through a computer. Subject scan complete, the voice announced. Species, human. Designate, Eli Navarro. Threat level, negligible. Physiological status, elevated cortisol. Signs of chronic fatigue, minor malnutrition. Potential compatibility index, high. The woman, Lyra, stiffened. She glanced up at the hull of the ship. Astra, recalibrate. That is impossible. He is a primitive. Readings are accurate, highborn, the AI replied. The biometrics indicate a 94% resonant frequency with the interface. He found us because the navigation corps invited him. Lyra looked back at Eli, her golden eyes widening with a mix of horror and curiosity. The ship invited you? I have a very trustworthy face, Eli offered, trying to keep his smile from looking like a grimace of terror. People tell me that all the time, usually before they ask to borrow money. She ignored the joke. She stepped right up to him, invading his personal space with a fearlessness that was terrifying. She was taller than him by 2 inches. Up close, he could smell her, a scent like ozone and crushed exotic flowers. Hold still, she commanded. Before Eli could protest, she reached out with her free hand. Her fingers were long and cool. She pressed her palm against his forehead. Eli flinched, but he could not pull away. It was not just a touch. It was a collision. His mind exploded. It wasn't pain. It was a sudden, violent expansion of awareness. He gasped as images that were not his own flooded his brain. He saw a city of glass spires floating in a golden sky. He saw a throne room echoing with angry voices. He saw a man with cruel eyes signing a document that smelled of betrayal. He felt a profound, crushing sense of loss, a grief so deep it felt like drowning. And at the same time, he felt her rifling through him. He felt her consciousness slide into his memories like a hand into a glove. She saw the war. She saw the mud of the trenches on Sepulchre 4. She saw the faces of the men Eli had lost. She felt the heavy, cold weight of the rifle in his hands. She felt his survivor's guilt, a knot of black tar in the center of his chest that never went away. She saw the moment he walked away from his commission, throwing his medals into the trash because he could not stomach the lies anymore. She felt his loneliness, not the solitude of the jungle, but the loneliness of a man who stands in a crowded room and knows he does not belong to anyone. The connection was raw. It was intimate in a way that made Eli's knees buckle. It was a violation, but it was also the first time in 10 years he felt truly seen. And underneath the fear and the trauma, there was something else, a spark. As their minds brushed against each other, a jolt of attraction arced between them. It was physical, electric, and undeniable. Eli felt her shock at the sensation. She was royalty. He was a muddy human scout, and yet her pulse spiked in time with his. He felt the warmth of her skin seeping into his brain, a craving to lean into her, to let the connection deepen. Lyra gasped and tore her hand away as if she had been burned. She stumbled back, the bioluminescent markings on her face flushing a deep, agitated violet. Her chest was heaving. "You," she breathed, staring at him with wide, shaken eyes. "Your mind. It is unstructured, chaos, and yet—" Eli leaned against the side of the ship, trying to get the world to stop spinning. He rubbed his forehead. "Buy a guy a drink first next time," he croaked. "Jesus, is that a standard greeting where you come from?" Lyra composed herself instantly, a mask of icy regality slamming down over her features. She raised the spear again, but her hand was trembling slightly. "You are part of the Helix survey teams," she accused, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "You are looking for me. My uncle sent you—" "I don't have an uncle," Eli said, straightening up. "And I don't work for Helix. I'm a freelancer. I map trees. I count bugs. I stay out of politics." "Politics?" Lyra let out a short, bitter laugh. "Is that what they call genocide on this world? Politics?" She paced a tight circle in the grass. "You do not understand, human. You have stumbled into a web that will strangle this entire colony. Helix Dominion is not just surveying. They are conspiring with the usurper. They are preparing a stage, and you and your people are the props to be broken." Eli watched her. The information was heavy, but what stuck with him was the fear coming off her. Through the fading echo of the psychic link, he could still feel it. She was terrified. She was alone. She was hunted. He looked at the Varan insignia etched into the hull above the hatch. He recognized it now. It was the same symbol he had seen on the restricted files back at the outpost. "Okay," Eli said slowly. "You're in trouble. Big trouble. And you think my bosses are in on it?" "I do not think," Lyra snapped. "I know. My ship holds the proof. That is why I am grounded here. That is why I am hiding under a camouflage field." She glared at him. "A field you disrupted." "Warning," Astra's voice cut in again. "Proximity alert. Aerial surveillance detected. Helix Class 4 drone inbound. Vector 210. Time to overhead. 10 seconds. Lyra's eyes went wide. The arrogance vanished, replaced by pure instinct. She grabbed Eli's jacket. "Move," she hissed. She didn't wait for him to agree. She hauled him toward the ship. She didn't take him up the ramp. There wasn't time. Instead, she dragged him into a narrow maintenance alcove recessed into the hull. Barely big enough for one person, let alone two. She shoved him against the back wall and pressed herself against him to stay out of the sight line of the clearing. "Stay silent," she whispered, her face inches from his. "Or I will kill you myself." The alcove was dark and cramped. Eli was pinned against the warm, organic material of the ship, with the alien princess pressed along the entire length of his body. He could feel the hard armor of her bodysuit, but also the softness underneath. Her legs were tangled with his. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. A high-pitched whine filled the clearing outside. A harsh white searchlight swept across the grass, cutting through the twilight. Eli held his breath. He could feel Lyra trembling, not from cold, but from tension. Because they were touching, the connection flared again. It wasn't a full meld like before, but it was a bleed. He felt her terror of being found, the image of a prison cell awaiting her. He felt her desperate need to protect the ship. And then, he felt her reaction to him. She was hyper-aware of his heat. He was running hot from the hike, and to her, he felt like a furnace. He felt her notice the scent of his skin, sweat, and soap and dust, and he felt a spike of curiosity that she tried to suppress. And she felt him. She felt his instinct to wrap his arms around her. It wasn't a conscious decision, it was a protective reflex. He wanted to shield her from the light. He wanted to keep her quiet. He felt the sudden, jagged desire to bury his face in the curve of her neck. The intimacy of it was shocking. They were strangers, enemies technically, and yet their minds were tangling like roots in the dark. Lyra's eyes met his in the shadows. Her pupils were blown wide. For a second, neither of them breathed. The drone hovered directly outside the alcove. The light splashed against the edge of the hull, missing them by inches. Astra spoke softly in their ears, or perhaps in their heads. Camouflage dampeners holding, thermal masking active. The drone paused, its turbine whining as it scanned the clearing. Then, finding nothing but grass, it accelerated away, the sound fading into the jungle. Lyra didn't move immediately. She stayed pressed against him for 3 heartbeats too long. The silence in the alcove was heavy, charged with the electricity of what had just passed between their minds. Then she shoved him. She pushed off his chest, stumbling back out into the clearing, regaining her balance and her dignity in one sharp motion. She smoothed her hair, though it was perfectly in place. "You must leave," she said. Her voice was steady, but her back was turned to him. Eli stepped out of the alcove, adjusting his jacket. He felt cold without the contact. "Leave? Just like that? You just told me my colony is about to get strangled." Lyra turned to face him. The spear was back in her hand, but she didn't raise it. She looked at him with a complicated expression, wary, assessing, and grudgingly respectful. "You cannot help me," she said. "You are a scout with a broken compass. This is a war between empires, and if you stay, you die. If you tell anyone what you saw, they will kill you to get to me." She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I could erase your memory. Astra has the capability. I could wipe this hour from your mind and leave you wandering in the swamp." Eli held her gaze. "But you won't." "Why?" she challenged. Because you think I am merciful?" "Because your ship likes me," Eli said, pointing a thumb at the hull. "And because you're lonely. I felt it." Lyra flinched. The truth hit her like a physical blow. The markings on her cheeks dimmed. "Go!" she commanded, pointing toward the wall of vines. "Return to your outpost. Speak to no one. If you value your life, Eli Navarro, do not come back." "And if I do?" Eli asked. She hesitated. For a moment, he thought she might smile. She didn't. "Then you are a fool," she said softly, "and I will have no choice but to use you." Eli looked at her for a long moment, the alien princess standing in the glowing grass, an exile with a spear and a broken starship. He nodded once. "Right. Message received. Nice meeting you. Your Highness." He turned and walked toward the edge of the clearing. He expected to have to hack his way out again. He expected the vines to be a wall. But as he approached the dense green curtain, the jungle moved. Vines retracted. Thorny branches lifted out of his way. The bioluminescent spores swirled around him, lighting a path that led straight back toward the mapped zones. The jungle wasn't fighting him anymore. It was escorting him. Eli paused at the threshold and looked back. The clearing was empty. The ship had phased out again, invisible to the naked eye. But he could still feel the hum of it in his teeth. And he could still feel the ghost of Lyra's mind brushing against his own. A faint, lingering static that tasted like ozone and secrets. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered to himself, repeating her warning. He grinned, a sharp, stubborn expression that cracked the dirt on his face. "Yeah," he said to the empty trees. "Try and stop me." He stepped into the shadows, and the jungle closed behind him like a door. The air conditioning in the administrative complex always hummed at a frequency that made Eli's teeth ache. It was a sterile, recycled cold, smelling faintly of ozone and floor wax. A sharp contrast to the humid, rotting perfume of the jungle that still clung to his boots. Eli sat in the debriefing chair, trying to look bored. It was a look he had perfected over 10 years in the Marines and another 5 as a colonial scout. The key was to keep the eyes slightly unfocused and the posture loose, like a man whose biggest worry was where to find a decent burger. Opposite him, behind a desk made of real mahogany imported from Earth, a luxury that cost more than Eli's entire dropship, sat Director Saavedra. Saavedra was a man who looked like he had been manufactured rather than born. His suit was crisp, his skin was exfoliated to a plastic sheen, and his smile did not reach his eyes. He tapped a manicured finger on the datapad Eli had submitted. "So," Saavedra said, his voice smooth as oil. "Equipment failure. Again." "Atmospheric interference, sir," Eli said, keeping his tone flat. "The ghost zone lives up to its name. My compass started doing the tango, and the topological scanner fried itself about 3 clicks in. I figured it was safer to pull back than to get lost in the soup." Saavedra scrolled through the report. It was a masterpiece of creative fiction. Eli had filled it with technical jargon about ion storms and magnetic anomalies, carefully omitting the part where the jungle had guided him to a hidden clearing containing a glowing alien princess. "And you saw nothing unusual?" Eli shrugged. "Just trees, bugs, and more trees, big ones." Saavedra set the datapad down. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "You know, Mr. Navarro, we had some interesting readings from the orbital sensors yesterday, right around the time your tracker went dark. A gravity spike, very localized, very intense." Eli felt a cold drop of sweat trickle down his spine. He forced himself to yawn. "Yeah? Maybe a tectonic shift? That ground is unstable. Felt like I was walking on pudding half the time." Saavedra stared at him. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. The director's eyes were like shark eyes, flat, black, and dead. "We value your work, Eli," Saavedra said softly. "But you should be careful. The jungle is a dangerous place and people go missing. Accidents happen, especially when they wander where they are not supposed to." The threat was not even veiled. It was sitting right there on the desk between them. "I'll keep that in mind," Eli said, standing up. "Can I go? My gear needs cleaning." "Of course," Saavedra smiled. "Dismissed." As Eli walked out of the office, he could feel Saavedra's gaze burning a hole in the back of his jacket. He didn't look back. He walked straight to the supply depot, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He was a terrible liar. He knew it. Saavedra knew it. He had to go back. The jungle at dawn was a world of gray mist and dripping leaves. Eli moved differently this time. He was not mapping. He was commuting. He carried a heavy rucksack over one shoulder, filled with items he had scrounged from the colony stores. He reached the curtain of vines that marked the entrance to the clearing. The low-frequency hum greeted him like an old friend, vibrating through the soles of his boots. The vines parted for him, uncoiling with wet, organic slithering sounds. He stepped into the clearing. The ship, the Sirena, Lyra had called it, was there, fully phased into reality this time. It floated above the silver grass, its bone-white hull catching the first rays of the sun. The blue veins pulsed slowly, rhythmically. The ramp was already down. Lyra stood at the top. She was not wearing the sleek bodysuit from yesterday. She wore a flowing robe of some shimmering, translucent material that shifted color as she moved, like oil on water. The plasma spear was in her hand, and it was pointed directly at his face. "You returned," she said. Her voice was cold, sharp as a blade. "Good morning to you too," Eli said, raising his free hand. "I brought breakfast." "You were followed," she accused. "You led them here." "I was not followed," Eli said. "I doubled back 3 times. I waded through a river for a mile to kill my scent, and I disabled my tracker before I even left the perimeter." "He speaks the truth. Highborn," Astra's voice chimed from the air. "Scans indicate no pursuit. He is alone, and his heart rate suggests he is terrified, which implies sincerity." "Thanks, Astra," Eli muttered. "You're a real pal." Lyra lowered the spear, but she didn't step aside. "Why did you come back? I told you it was dangerous." "Because my boss is a shark in a suit who knows something is out here," Eli said, walking up the ramp. He stopped a few feet from her. "And because you're stuck. You need parts. You need power cells. And unless you have a craving for tree bark, you probably need food." He swung the rucksack off his shoulder and dropped it at her feet. It landed with a heavy thud. Lyra looked at the bag, then at him. Her golden eyes narrowed. "You bring me tribute?" "I bring you protein bars and a few ion batteries I stole from the maintenance shed," Eli said. "Call it a peace offering." She hesitated, then gestured for him to enter. "Come, but touch nothing unless I permit it." The interior of the Sirena was breathtaking. Eli had spent his life on human ships, utilitarian boxes of gray metal, smelling of recycled air and hydraulic fluid. This was like walking inside a living creature. The corridors curved organically, the walls warm to the touch and textured like polished coral. There were no harsh angles. Light didn't come from fixtures, it bled from the walls themselves. A soft amber glow that brightened as they walked. They entered the command deck, a circular chamber dominated by a pool of liquid light in the center. Above the pool, 3-dimensional star charts shifted and rotated, displaying galaxies Eli didn't recognize. Panels along the walls bloomed open like flower petals as Lyra approached, revealing intricate controls made of floating crystals. Lyra moved to the central pool and waved her hand. The star charts vanished, replaced by a holographic projection. It was a recording, grainy and distorted. "You asked why I am here," Lyra said, her back to him. "This is why." The hologram showed a meeting room. 2 men sat at a table. One was huge, a Varan with skin like cracked stone and eyes that burned with cruelty, Regent Kale. The other was human. Eli drew a sharp breath. It was Saavedra. But a younger Saavedra, or perhaps just less polished. "The agreement is simple," the hologram of Kyle rumbled. "We supply the incidents. You supply the outrage. My fleets need a justification to expand our borders. Your corporation needs a war to drive up the price of your defensive tech." "A terrorist cell," Saavedra's voice replied smoothly. "Operating out of the frontier worlds, we can arrange for supply depots to be raided, colonies to be harassed." "Harassed is insufficient," Kale sneered. "I need martyrs. I need blood on the broadcasts. The frontier must burn. Director, only then can I step in as the savior." The hologram flickered and died. Eli stood in silence, the blood draining from his face. "They're manufacturing a war," he whispered. "The raids, the missing ships, it's all staged." "To justify a crusade," Lyra said, turning to face him. Her expression was haunted. "My uncle, the regent, craves power. He wishes to restore the old borders of the Dominion. He would sacrifice millions of lives, my people and yours, to crown himself emperor. She walked to a console, her fingers dancing over the crystals. I found the logs, the encrypted comms between Kale and Helix. When they discovered I had the data, they branded me a traitor. They said I was mentally unstable, paranoid. So you ran, Eli said. I fled, she corrected. They chased me across 3 sectors. The Serena took heavy damage. We crashed here months ago. Astra masked our signature, hiding us in the planet's biosphere. That's how the ship phases, Eli realized. The jungle. It's not just plants, it's tech. Varan terraforming engines, Astra supplied, seeded here 300 years ago. The local flora has a receptive neural lattice. I can weave the ship into the ecosystem's energy field. We are not just hidden. We are part of the forest. Clever, Eli admitted. But you're stuck. The ship is hurt. The primary drive coil is fractured, Lyra said, pointing to a schematic floating in the air. I cannot repair it alone. The components are heavy, and the radiation in the engineering bay is problematic for my physiology without shielding I no longer have. Eli looked at the schematic. He wasn't an engineer, but he knew how to fix things. You didn't survive on the frontier without learning how to wrench on a fusion drive. I can help, he said. Lyra looked at him. You are a scout. I was a Marine, Eli said. I fixed tanks in the mud while people were shooting at me. I think I can handle a cracked coil. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well, but we must decontaminate you first. The engineering bay is a sterile environment. Your biology is full of microbes. Charming, Eli muttered. She led him to a small antechamber off the main deck. Strip, she ordered, turning to a control panel. Eli blinked. Excuse me? Your garments are filthy, Lyra said, not looking at him. The field cannot cleanse fabric. It must be direct skin contact. Remove your upper garments. Eli hesitated, then sighed. He unzipped his jacket and peeled off his undershirt. It was soaked with sweat and grimed with jungle dirt. He tossed it into the corner. He stood there, feeling exposed. He wasn't a vanity model. His chest and shoulders were a map of scars, burn marks from plasma scuffs, a jagged line across his ribs from a shrapnel burst, the faded tattoo of his old unit on his bicep. Lyra turned around. She froze. Her eyes didn't go to his face. They went to the scars. She stared at the jagged line on his ribs, tracing it with her gaze. Her expression softened, the royal mask slipping just a fraction. You have been broken many times, she said quietly. Occupational hazard, Eli said, trying to sound casual, though his heart was thumping. You should see the other guy. The decontamination field requires a sensor anchor, Lyra said, her voice a little breathless. She picked up a small silver disc. I must place this on your arm. She stepped close. The scent of ozone and exotic flowers filled his head again. She reached out, her fingers brushing his bare bicep as she pressed the disc against his skin. The contact was electric. The psychic link didn't just flicker, it roared. It hit Eli like a physical wave, the sensation of her skin against his, the warmth of her breath, the sudden sharp spike of her pulse. But this time, it was deeper. He felt her physical awareness of him. He felt how large he seemed to her. He felt her notice the hardness of his muscle under her hand, the heat radiating off him. He felt a sudden, confusing jolt of hunger, not for food, but for proximity. She wanted to step closer. She wanted to touch the scars, and Lyra felt him. She felt the way his breath hitched when she touched him. She felt the rush of blood to his face. She felt his attraction to her, raw, unpolished, and intensely masculine. He wasn't looking at her like a princess or a monster. He was looking at her like a woman. For a Varan highborn, raised in a court of sterilized emotions and political marriages, the rawness of it was terrifying. It was primal. She gasped, stumbling back, clutching her own wrist as if his skin had scorched her. "What is this?" she whispered, her eyes wide and panicked. "Why is your mind so loud?" "I don't know," Eli said, his voice rough. "You're the psychic. You tell me." "This is forbidden," she said, her voice shaking. "To bond with an alien, it is a heresy, a pollution of the bloodline. If the council knew I had even touched your mind—" "The council isn't here," Eli said gently. "And from what I saw on that hologram, they're not exactly winning any morality contests." Lyra looked at him, really looked at him, struggling to reconcile the primitive she had been taught to despise with the man standing in front of her. The man whose mind felt warm and solid and strangely safe. "You are dangerous, Eli Navarro," she said. "I've been told," Eli grinned, though his hands were shaking too. "Look, we have work to do. Let's fix your ship before we worry about my loud mind." The next few hours were a blur of work. They moved into the engineering bay, a cavernous space filled with humming machinery. Eli worked the manual clamps, using his strength to haul the heavy plating aside, while Lyra used her telekinetic interface to realign the delicate crystals of the drive core. It was hard work, but it was good work. And as the night wore on, the tension began to bleed away. They took a break, sitting on the floor of the bay, eating the protein bars Eli had brought. "This tastes like compressed dust," Lyra said, wrinkling her nose at the chocolate-flavored brick. "Hey, that's top-tier colonial cuisine," Eli retorted, chewing enthusiastically. "You just have refined, aristocratic taste buds. You probably eat, what, starlight and ambrosia?" "We eat nutrient paste," Lyra said. "It is flavorless and efficient. We do not eat recreational sugar." "You're missing out," Eli said, "and wait until I introduce you to coffee. It'll change your life. Or kill you. It's a toss-up." She looked at him, and for the first time, a genuine smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You are absurd." "I'm charming," Eli corrected. "So this music Astra is playing, is this traditional Varan opera because it sounds like a whale dying in a blender?" Lyra laughed. It was a short, surprised sound, like a bell ringing. "That is the Hymn of the Seven Moons. It is considered a masterpiece of harmonic convergence." "It's terrible," Eli said. "Next time, I'm bringing my playlist. You need some classic rock, something with guitars, sentimental, aggressive guitars." "I dread the thought," she said, but her eyes were bright. The intimacy was sneaking up on them. It wasn't the psychic link this time. It was just them. Two people, hiding in a ship, eating bad food and sharing the dark. Meanwhile, miles away, Director Saavedra was staring at a monitor. "Repeat that," he said into his comms. "Energy spike confirmed, sir." The technician's voice crackled. "Sector 4, deep jungle. Exact coordinates where Navarro's tracker went offline yesterday." Saavedra smiled. It was a cold, predatory expression. "He went back," Saavedra murmured. "The fool actually went back." He keyed a secure channel. "Strike Team Alpha. This is Director Saavedra. Target acquired. Navarro is in the exclusion zone. He has likely located the asset. Your orders are to observe and recover. If he resists, neutralize him, and bring me whatever he found, intact." "Copy that, Director Moving out." The dawn was breaking when Eli left the ship. He needed more parts, a specific fusion coupler that he couldn't scrounge. He had to go into the town proper, to the black market dealer in the lower district. "Be careful," Lyra said at the hatch. She didn't have the spear this time. She just looked worried. "I'll be back before you miss me," Eli promised. He made it to the colony outskirts without incident. The town was waking up, the neon signs of the night market flickering out as the sun rose. Eli moved through the alleys, avoiding the main thoroughfares. He got the coupler. It cost him 3 weeks' pay, but he got it. He tucked it into his jacket and turned to head back. That was when the shadows moved. They came out of nowhere. 3 figures in matte black tactical gear. Faces obscured by helmets. No insignias. Black Ops. Eli didn't ask questions. He dropped the rucksack and swung. His fist connected with a helmet, jarring his hand, but the soldier staggered back. Eli spun, kicking the second man in the knee, hearing a satisfying crunch. "Navarro!" a voice boomed from the third figure. "Stand down!" "Go to hell!" Eli shouted, diving behind a dumpster as a stun bolt sizzled through the air where his head had been. He was good, but they were better equipped. They flanked him, pinning him in the dead end of the alley. He scrambled up a fire escape, but a magnetic grapple wrapped around his ankle, jerking him down. He hit the pavement hard, the breath knocked out of him. A boot slammed onto his chest, the barrel of a rifle pressed against his forehead. "Target secured," the soldier said into his comms. "Transport inbound." Eli struggled, gasping for air. You guys are making a big mistake." "Shut up," the soldier said, raising the butt of the rifle to knock him out. Suddenly, a high-pitched buzzing filled the alley. It sounded like a swarm of angry hornets. The soldiers looked up. A cloud of tiny lights descended from the rooftops. They looked like fireflies, but they moved with precision. Hundreds of them. "What the?" the soldier started. The swarm dived. The drones, disguised as jungle insects, slammed into the soldiers, and they didn't sting, they discharged. Arcs of blue electricity jumped from the drones to the tactical armor, overloading the suit's electronics. The soldiers convulsed, their weapons seizing up, their helmet HUDs flashing red. "Astra!" Eli yelled, recognizing the distraction. He kicked the soldier off him, rolled to his feet, and grabbed his rucksack. The soldiers were flailing, swatting at the glowing cloud that was zapping them with precision shocks. Eli didn't wait to watch. He sprinted. He vaulted a fence, scrambled through a gap in a wall, and disappeared into the maze of the lower district. He ran until his lungs burned, ducking into a crowded market square, blending into the morning rush of workers. He leaned against a stall selling fried noodles, trying to slow his heart rate. He reached up to his ear. He felt a tiny, warm lump behind his lobe, the subdermal calm Astra had implanted. "Eli!" Lyra's voice exploded in his ear. She sounded furious, terrified, and relieved all at once. "Eli, are you unharmed?" "I'm okay," Eli wheezed, looking over his shoulder. "I'm okay. Thanks for the cavalry. Those bugs pack a punch." "You idiot!" Lyra hissed. "I told you they were watching. Get out of there. Return to the ship immediately." "I can't," Eli whispered. "They're blocking the perimeter. If I go back to the jungle now, I'll lead them straight to you." "Then what will you do?" Eli looked around the market. Neon lights reflected in the puddles. The smell of frying oil and ozone. The noise of 1,000 people just trying to survive. "I have to hide," Eli said, "and we need a new plan. Because they know. Lyra. They know everything. Stay alive, Eli." Lyra's voice softened, almost breaking. "Do not let them take you." "I won't," Eli said. He pulled his collar up and vanished into the crowd. "I promise." The rain in Sector 4 did not wash the grime away. It just made the neon lights bleed. Eli Navarro stood in the shadow of a noodle stall, water dripping from the rim of his cap, watching the crowd surge through the narrow streets of the night market. It was a river of humanity, desperate and loud. The air smelled of ozone, frying grease, and the distinct metallic tang of anxiety. Every third face looked like an informant, every drone buzzing overhead, ostensibly delivering takeout or scanning for heat leaks, felt like a sniper scope centered on his spine. He checked his wrist comp. It was dead, disabled by his own hand to stop the tracking. He was invisible to the grid, which meant he was also blind. Eli, Lyra's voice crackled in his subdermal earpiece, sharp with royal command. This is madness. Astra registers 3 distinct helix patrol patterns converging on the lower district. You must return to the extraction point. Eli tapped the side of his neck, keeping his voice low, indistinguishable from the mutterings of the beggars and traders around him. Negative. If I come back now, I lead them to the ship. We are burned. Lyra, Saavedra knows. Then we leave, Lyra insisted. The Sirena can limp to orbit. We can jump to FTL before they lock weapons. And go where? Eli hissed, dodging a pushcart piled high with steaming synthetic dumplings. To your uncle. He wants you dead. To Earth? They'll hand you over for a trade deal. We need leverage. We need proof. We have my word, Lyra said. I am a daughter of the High House. Your word doesn't mean squat to a corporate board or a military tribunal, Eli countered, ducking into the awning of a surplus electronics shop. We need hard data, logs, signatures, the kind of dirt that makes Saavedra's bosses sweat enough to cut him loose. There was a pause on the line. Then Astra's cool synthetic voice cut in. The human is statistically correct, highborn. Without verifiable evidence of the conspiracy, the Varan Council will view your return as a defection, and the Earth government will view you as a hostile combatant. However, I have located a potential asset. Eli paused, pretending to examine a bin of rusty servo motors. Talk to me, Astra. Helix maintains a secure facility 4 miles east of the perimeter, deep within the exclusion zone. The AI reported, it houses a quantum relay for deep space communication. If Regent Kale is coordinating with Helix Command, the treaty logs and war plans would be stored in the core data node of that relay. A black site data center, Eli murmured. That is where the bodies are buried. It is heavily guarded, Lyra warned. Turret arrays, perimeter fields. You cannot breach it alone. I don't plan to, Eli said. He took a deep breath, watching a pair of uniformed Helix security officers push through the crowd 20 feet away. I need a hacker. Someone who can speak to the local tech in a language they don't teach at the academy. Someone with royal access codes. No, Lyra said immediately. Absolutely not. I can get us to the door, Eli said, but I can't open it. You want to save your people, you want to stop a war, you have to come out of the tower, Princess. The silence on the comms stretched for 10 long seconds. Meet me at the North Service Gate, Lyra said finally, her voice tight. And Eli? If you get me killed, I will be extremely displeased. 20 minutes later, the service gate rattled. Eli watched from the shadows of a loading dock as a figure slipped through the gap in the fence. She was wrapped in a heavy, rough-spun cloak that smelled of engine oil, something she must have scavenged from the ship's maintenance lockers. Her face was hidden deep inside the hood, and she moved with a hesitation that was entirely uncharacteristic. He signaled her, and she hurried toward him, keeping her head down. When she reached the safety of the overhang, she looked up. Eli blinked. She wore amber-tinted contact lenses that dulled the molten gold of her eyes to a muddy brown. Strips of medical gauze were wrapped tightly around her neck and wrists, hiding the bioluminescent markings. She looked like a burn victim or a leper, someone people would instinctively look away from. "Nice look," Eli whispered. "Very post-apocalyptic chic." "This fabric itches," Lyra complained, scratching at her collarbone. "And these lenses make the world look like it is dying of jaundice. Is this how you humans see all the time?" "Pretty much," Eli said. "Keep the hood up. We have to cross the market to get to the transport hub. Stay close to me. Don't make eye contact. And for the love of God, don't try to order anyone to be executed." "I am in disguise, not lobotomized," Lyra snapped. They moved into the market. If the jungle had been an overload of nature, the market was an assault of commerce. Music thumped from distorted speakers, heavy bass lines overlaid with frantic synth melodies. Holographic advertisements for mood stabilizers and cheap whiskey danced in the rain. The smell of roasting meat was thick enough to chew. Lyra walked stiffly, her hand gripping Eli's jacket sleeve. She flinched every time a drone buzzed too low. "Relax," Eli murmured, leaning close to her ear. "You're a scout's girlfriend. You're tired, you're hungry, you're nobody." "I am surrounded by filth," she hissed back. "Why is everyone shouting? Why is the air edible?" "That's just the street food," Eli said. He steered her toward a stall where a vendor was grilling skewers of meat glazed in a bright red sauce. "Here, eat something. It'll help you blend in. People who are running for their lives don't stop for snacks." He bought a skewer of fire nut chicken, mostly soy protein and capsaicin, and handed it to her. Lyra looked at it suspiciously. "Is this animal?" "Vaguely," Eli said. "Try it." She took a small, delicate bite. Her eyes went wide behind the tinted lenses. She gagged, a very unroyal sound that sounded like a cat trying to expel a hairball. She covered her mouth with her hand, coughing violently. "Poison," she wheezed, tears streaming down her face. "You have fed me a chemical weapon." "It's spicy," Eli laughed, patting her back as passers-by chuckled. "It clears the sinuses. It burns my soul," Lyra gasped, glaring at him. The vendor, a rotund man with a cybernetic eye, leaned over the counter, grinning at Lyra. "Too hot for you, sweetheart. I can make you something sweeter. A pretty thing like you shouldn't be crying unless it's over a broken heart." Lyra straightened up, forgetting her disguise for a second. She looked the man dead in the eye. "Sir, your offer of a diplomatic alliance is noted, but I must decline your courtship rituals as I am currently engaged in a matter of state security." The vendor blinked. Right. You enjoy the chicken, lady." Eli dragged her away before she could declare war on the noodle stand. "Diplomatic alliance?" he whispered, trying not to laugh. "He was flirting with you." "He offered me sweets to stop my tears," Lyra said, confused. "Is that not a prelude to a marriage contract?" "Not usually," Eli said. "Usually it just means he wants to sell you a donut." They reached a small plaza near the center of the market. A band was playing under a tarp, 3 musicians with acoustic drums and a battered electric violin. The rhythm was infectious, a driving, syncopated beat that cut through the rain. A crowd had gathered, people swaying and stomping in the puddles. Suddenly, Eli saw the glint of black armor at the far end of the plaza. A helix patrol, 4 of them, scanning faces. "Don't look," Eli commanded softly. "Patrol at 6 o'clock. We can't run. They'll spot the movement." "What do we do?" Lyra asked, her voice tightening. "We blend," Eli said. He grabbed her hand and pulled her into the center of the dancing crowd. "What are you doing?" she hissed, resisting as he spun her around. "I do not dance. Not like this. Varan dance is a precise mathematical expression of orbital mechanics, not this chaotic twitching. Just move, Eli said, pulling her close. Put your hands on me, follow my lead. Lyra stood rigid as a board, her hands hovering awkwardly over his shoulders. Eli placed his hands on her waist, pulling her in until they were chest to chest. The rain plastered her cloak to her body. Feel the drum, Eli said, his voice low and steady. 1, 2, 1, 2. Stop thinking about the math, just feel it. The violin swelled, a mournful, soaring note that dropped into a heavy groove, slowly, reluctantly. Lyra relaxed. She felt the rhythm vibrating through the soles of her boots. She felt the heat of Eli's hands on her waist. She closed her eyes, shutting out the neon and the soldiers, and let the music in. She began to sway. It wasn't the rigid, formal steps of the high court. It was fluid. It was instinct. Her hips moved, matching Eli's. Her hands slid up his wet jacket to grip his shoulders. She opened her eyes. The shock on her face was profound. She was smiling. Not a polite, diplomatic smile, but a real, wide expression of wonder. It is simple, she whispered. There is no purpose. It is just joy. Yeah, Eli said, watching the rain drip from her hood. It's just for us. The psychic bond, dormant since the ship, suddenly flared to life. It didn't hit them with images or memories this time. It hit them with emotion. Eli felt a wave of pure, crystalline sweetness wash over him. Lyra's sudden realization that she was free, that for this 1 second, she wasn't a princess or a fugitive, just a girl dancing in the rain. And Lyra felt him. She felt the heavy, protective warmth in his chest. She felt the way he was looking at her, seeing past the bandages and the cloak. She felt his desire, not a sharp, hungry thing, but a slow, steady burn that made her knees weak. The patrol moved past them, scanning the edges of the crowd, ignoring the couple lost in each other in the middle. They didn't notice the soldiers leaving. They were swaying together, bodies pressed tight. Eli's hand drifted up her back, resting between her shoulder blades. Lyra's forehead rested against his chest. Her breath was hitching, not from exertion, but from the overwhelming proximity. For a heartbeat, the mission didn't exist. The war didn't exist. There was just the rain, the drum, and the terrifying temptation to stay right here, in this circle of strangers, forever. Then the music stopped. The song ended. The crowd clapped. Eli and Lyra pulled apart, breathless, blinking as reality came rushing back. "They're gone," Eli said, his voice rough. "We need to go." Lyra nodded, adjusting her hood, but her hands were trembling. "Yes, we have a schedule." They slipped out of the plaza and down a narrow, garbage-strewn alley behind the market. The silence between them was heavy, charged with the static of what had just happened. "You stepped on my foot twice," Lyra said, trying to regain her composure. "Your coordination is lacking for a scout, and you hold on tight for a princess," Eli fired back, grinning. "I think I have bruises on my shoulders. I was merely ensuring I did not fall." She sniffed, but the corner of her mouth quirked up. Though, the rhythm was acceptable. "High praise," Eli said. "Non, come on. The jungle is this way." Getting to the facility was the easy part. Getting in was the nightmare. The Helix Black Site was an angular fortress of dark metal, half swallowed by the jungle. Vines as thick as suspension cables wrapped around the guard towers, and the hum of the generators was drowned out by the scream of nocturnal insects. "Perimeter field is active," Astra reported through their comms. "Class 5 barrier. It will vaporize organic matter on contact." "Good thing I brought a key," Eli muttered. He pulled a stolen ID card, lifted from a drunk engineer in the market, from his pocket. They crouched in the mud near a drainage outflow. The rain had turned the jungle floor into a slick, treacherous slurry. "That ID will get us through the outer gate," Lyra whispered. "But the internal systems will require a biometric handshake." "That's where you come in," Eli said. "Can you trick it?" "I can persuade it," Lyra corrected. They moved. The infiltration was a series of held breaths and fast movements. They slipped through the outer gate when a supply truck rumbled out. They dodged the sweeping red eyes of the turret arrays, flattening themselves against the wet metal walls. Inside, the facility was a maze of cold steel and flickering lights. It smelled of ozone and recycled air. They reached a service corridor. "Up," Eli signaled, pointing to a ventilation hatch. They climbed. The shaft was cramped. Eli went first, Lyra following close behind. The space was so tight that every time he stopped, she bumped into him. "This is undignified," she whispered, her voice echoing softly in the metal tube. "It's stealthy," Eli whispered back. "Quiet." They dropped down into the server room. It was a vast circular chamber dominated by a towering column of blue light, the quantum relay core. "Target acquired," Eli said. Lyra moved to the console. She didn't type. She pulled off her gloves, revealing her long, violet fingers. She placed her hands directly onto the interface panel. "Astra, bridge the connection," she commanded. "Override Helix encryption. Isolate the traffic from the region's private channel." The console sparked. Symbols flashed across the screen, not human text, but the flowing, complex script of the Varan. "I have it," Lyra breathed. "Decrypting now." A holographic window popped up. It wasn't just logs, it was a video file. A recording of a briefing between Regent Kale and the Helix board. "The timetable is accelerated," Kale's voice boomed from the terminal. "The colony on Caldera 3 has served its purpose. Initiate the containment incident." "Clarify," a Helix executive asked. "Reactor failure," Kale said, smiling a smile that was all teeth. "Simulated, of course. We will detonate the primary fusion core of the colony. The explosion will be attributed to rebel sabotage. My fleet will then have the justification to bombard the planet from orbit to contain the radiation spread. Total sterilization." Eli felt the blood drain from his face. "They're not just going to occupy us," he whispered. "They're going to wipe us out. Everyone. Mia. The kids in the market. Everyone." Lyra was staring at the screen, her hands shaking violently. She read the scrolling text beneath the video. It was a signed order. Authorization, Regent Kale. Co-signed, House Seristhal. He signed it in the name of the house. Lyra choked out, "My name. He is using my family's seal to sanction a massacre." She pulled her hands away from the console as if it were red hot. She backed away, her eyes filling with tears. "I did this," she whispered. "If I had not fled, if I had challenged him earlier, this is my bloodline. This is my burden." Eli grabbed her shoulders. He spun her around to face him. "Stop it," he ordered. His voice was hard, cutting through her panic. "Look at me. I am a monster," she sobbed. "We are a plague on the stars." "No," Eli said. "He is a monster. You are the one trying to stop him." He shook her gently. "Listen to me. Lyra, I've seen this before. Generals, CEOs, kings, it doesn't matter what they call themselves. They sit in rooms like this and they move pieces on a board. They think we're just numbers. They think we're disposable." His eyes burned with a fierce, angry light. "But we're not. You are not him. You are here, in the mud, risking your neck to save people who don't even know your name. That isn't a monster. That's a hero. Now get back on that console and steal their damn secrets so we can burn them down. Lyra stared at him. She saw the conviction in his eyes. She felt the solidity of his belief in her through the bond, a steady, unshakable rock in the storm of her guilt. She took a ragged breath. She nodded. "Yes," she said. "We burn them down." She turned back to the console. Her fingers flew. "Transferring data to Astra. I am also uploading a dormant logic virus. It will eat their local backups. When we leave, they will have nothing left but static." "Download complete," Astra chimed. "Alert! Silent alarm triggered. Security protocols engaging." Red lights began to flash. Sirens wailed, a deafening rhythmic shriek. "Time to go," Eli yelled. The door to the server room hissed open. 3 guards burst in, rifles raised. "Freeze!" Lyra didn't freeze. She flicked her wrist. The gravity control for the server racks reversed. The heavy metal towers slammed upward into the ceiling, creating a wall of sparking debris between them and the guards. "Run!" she screamed. They bolted for the rear exit. They sprinted down the corridors, boots slamming on the metal grating. Laser fire sizzled past their heads, scorching the walls. "They're sealing the bulkheads," Eli shouted, seeing the heavy blast doors slowly grinding shut ahead of them. "Slide!" They threw themselves onto the polished floor, sliding under the closing door with inches to spare. The metal clanged shut behind them, muffling the shouts of the pursuers. They burst out onto a catwalk suspended over the generator bay. It was a 100-foot drop to the turbines below. "The exit is on the other side," Eli pointed. They ran, but halfway across, a turret mounted on the wall swiveled toward them. "Get down!" Eli tackled Lyra as the turret opened fire. A bolt of plasma hit the support cable of the catwalk. The metal groaned. The cable snapped with a sound like a gunshot. The catwalk lurched, tilting violently to the side. They slid. Eli dug his fingers into the grating, grabbing Lyra's wrist with his other hand as she dangled over the abyss. "I have you," he grunted, his muscles straining. "I have you." "Let go," Lyra yelled, looking at the turbines below. "You cannot pull me up." "Shut up," Eli roared. "I am not dropping you." He heaved, veins bulging in his neck. With a scream of effort, he hauled her back onto the tilting platform. "Jump!" he yelled, pointing to the maintenance ledge 10 feet away. "It is too far." "Trust me." They scrambled to the edge. The catwalk gave another groan, the remaining bolts shearing off. They leaped. For a second, they were weightless. Then they hit the ledge, rolling hard. The catwalk broke free behind them, crashing down into the turbines in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. They didn't stop to watch. They scrambled through the maintenance hatch and burst out into the jungle night. The rain was torrential now. It was a wall of water. "They will track us," Lyra gasped as they slid down a mud embankment. "Thermal scans, motion sensors." "Use the jungle," Eli shouted over the storm. "You said you could control it." Lyra closed her eyes. She reached out with her mind, connecting to the biotech lattice buried in the roots. "Astra," she commanded. "Phantom signal and protocol mirage." Behind them, the jungle seemed to shimmer. Trees shifted. Vines twisted into shapes that mimicked human heat signatures. The path they had taken dissolved, replaced by a wall of thorns. They ran until they couldn't breathe. They scrambled through thickets that tore at their clothes. Finally, exhausted, they collapsed under the shelter of a massive, ancient root system that formed a natural cave. They lay there in the mud, chests heaving, soaked to the bone. The searchlights of the drones swept the canopy above, but the beams didn't find them. The drones chased the phantom signals Lyra had created, buzzing off into the deep swamp. Eli wiped the rain from his eyes. He looked at Lyra. Her hood had fallen back. Her bandages were unraveling, revealing the glowing violet markings on her skin. She was shivering violently. We did it, she whispered. We did. Eli breathed. He moved closer to share his body heat. They huddled together in the dark, cramped space under the root. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the intense, humming reality of the bond. It was louder than ever. Pressed together in the mud, Eli felt every shiver that ran through her. He felt the cold of the rain on her skin and the heat of the blood beneath it. Lyra turned her head. Her face was inches from his. The contact lenses had washed away or dissolved, and her eyes were gold again, burning in the shadows. You saved me, she said softly. On the catwalk, you did not let go. I told you, Eli said, his voice husky. I don't leave people behind. The bond surged. It wasn't just gratitude, and it was a pull, a magnetic force that terrified him. He felt her need for him, not as a pilot, not as a soldier, but as a man. He felt her wonder at his stubbornness, her awe at his strength, and she felt him. She felt his reverence for her. She felt the way he wanted to brush the wet hair from her face. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The air between them crackled. Slowly, inevitably, they leaned in. Lyra's eyes fluttered half shut. Eli's hand came up, cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing the glowing mark on her cheekbone. Her skin was soft, impossibly soft. Their lips were a breath apart. Eli could taste the rain on her. He could feel the electricity arcing between them, a promise of something that would change everything. Alert! Astra's voice barked from Eli's ear, loud enough to wake the dead. Proximity risk. Biological entities approaching the Serena perimeter. Recommendation. Haste. Lyra jolted back as if she had been electrocuted. She scrambled away from him, hitting her head on the root. Her face flushed a deep, luminous violet. She looked horrified, mortified, and breathless. She stammered. The ship. We must go. Eli sat there for a second, his hand still suspended in the air. He let out a long, shaky breath. He ran a hand through his wet hair. Right, he said, his voice cracking. The ship. He crawled out from under the root, offering her a hand. She took it, but her grip was tentative, shy. They walked the last mile in silence, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was the silence of a held breath. The jungle parted for them, the bioluminescence guiding them home, and every step felt like they were walking toward a cliff they had already decided to jump off. Dawn broke over the jungle of Caldera 3 like a bruising, purple and gray light struggling through the heavy canopy. Inside the Serena, the mood was darker than the storm clouds clearing outside. Eli sat on the edge of the central command console, rubbing eyes that felt like they were filled with sand. Lyra stood perfectly still in the center of the room, staring at the holographic display Astra had projected. Her posture was rigid, her hands clasped behind her back so tightly that her knuckles were white. Decrypting final packet, Astra's voice announced, devoid of emotion but heavy with implication. Source confirmed. Flagship Vengeance. Regent Kale's personal command. The hologram shifted, resolving into a tactical map of the sector. A red line arced from the edge of the system, terminating directly above their heads. Time to intercept, Lyra asked, her voice hollow. Calculated at current velocity, Astra replied. 48 hours. The fleet consists of 1 dreadnought and 4 destroyer escorts. Eli looked at the red line. It wasn't just a fleet. It was an execution squad. And the plan? Eli asked. We know they want a war. How do they start it? Astra found the operational orders in the Helix data node, Lyra said, pointing to a scrolling wall of text. It is titled Operation Cinder. At 0 hour, Helix security will disable the safeties on the colony's primary fusion reactor. They will trigger a thermal runaway. Eli felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. A meltdown. It would vaporize the settlement. 10,000 people. Gone in a flash. Helix will claim it was an act of terrorism, Lyra continued, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. Sabotage by anti-colonial extremists. My uncle's fleet will arrive conveniently moments later. They will claim they are responding to a distress call. They will bombard the surrounding jungle to contain the radiation and eliminate the terrorists. And the survivors? Eli asked, though he already knew the answer. There will be no survivors in the blast zone, Lyra said. Those on the perimeter will be desperate, terrified, and poisoned. They will beg for salvation. The Varan Dominion will offer humanitarian aid, protection, and order. In exchange, we gain a permanent military foothold in Earth space. Helix gains a lucrative reconstruction contract and a war that drives up their stock prices. She turned away from the map, walking to the far wall where the biological hull pulsed with a slow, rhythmic blue light. She pressed her forehead against the warm surface. He is willing to burn a world to build a throne, she whispered, and he is doing it because of me, because I am the loose end he needs to cut. He's doing it because he's a tyrant, Eli said, standing up and walking toward her. This isn't your fault, Lyra. Is it not? She spun around, her golden eyes wide and wet. If I had died in the crash, the evidence would be gone. Maybe he would have found another excuse, or maybe he would have waited. But my survival forces his hand. Every second I breathe air on this planet, I am endangering every child in that colony. Don't do that, Eli warned. Don't start calculating your own value as a casualty. I am an equation to him, Lyra snapped. I should solve it. If I surrender. If you surrender, he kills you and blows up the reactor anyway. Eli cut in sharply. You think a man like that honors deals? You're the proof. As long as you exist, you're a threat. And if you're dead, you can't testify. He reached out, wanting to touch her shoulder, but she flinched away, vibrating with guilt and fear. We have to go to the colony, Eli said, dropping his hand. We have the data. We have the proof. We need to get it to the people before the fleet arrives. The people? Lyra laughed bitterly. Have you seen the broadcasts, Eli? Astra, Eli said. Show me. The hologram shifted again. It displayed a feed from the Colonial News Network. A Helix spokesperson was standing in front of a green screen depicting a burning building. A banner scrolled across the bottom. Alien terror threat elevated. Report anomalies. Then, Eli's face appeared. It was an old service photo from his marine file, looking younger and less cynical, but unmistakably him. Wanted, the bold text read. Eli Navarro, rogue scout, suspected collaboration with hostile biological entities, extremely dangerous. They are painting you as a traitor, Lyra said softly. They say you have been compromised by a jungle pathogen that causes violent hallucinations. Every citizen in Caldera 3 is looking for you. Eli stared at his own face. Well, he said, forcing a grim smile. I always wanted to be famous. I just hoped it would be for something cool, like juggling chainsaws. This is not a joke, Lyra hissed. I know, Eli said, his voice dropping. But if we stay here, we die, and so do they. We need allies. I know someone who hates Helix almost as much as you do. The colony of Caldera 3 was a place of corrugated metal, rain-slicked concrete, and neon desperation. The atmosphere in the streets was brittle. People walked fast, heads down, eyeing their neighbors with suspicion. Helix patrols had doubled. Drones buzzed overhead like angry wasps. Eli moved through the shadows of the lower district, his cap pulled low, a heavy canvas poncho obscuring his frame. Lyra was beside him, wrapped in her oil-stained cloak, her face hidden deep in the hood. They slipped into the back entrance of the Rusty Sprocket, a dive bar that smelled of stale beer and hydraulic fluid. It was the kind of place where miners and engineers went to forget they were living on a mud ball at the edge of known space. The back booth was occupied by a woman with grease under her fingernails and hair dyed a violent shade of electric blue. Mia. She looked up as Eli slid into the seat opposite her. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She took a slow sip of her drink. "You have a lot of nerve, Navarro," she said, her voice low. "Your face is worth 5,000 credits right now. I could buy a new engine for that." "But you won't," Eli said, "because you still owe me for pulling your brother out of that collapse in Sector 7. Mia sighed, setting the glass down. "Yeah, I guess I do." She looked at the hooded figure next to Eli. "So, this is her? The hostile biological entity?" Lyra lowered her hood just enough to reveal the amber contact lenses and the bandages on her face. "I am Lyra," she said stiffly, "and I am not hostile unless provoked." Mia snorted. Eli always did have terrible taste in women. First the psycho from logistics, now an intergalactic war criminal. You really know how to pick them, flyboy. "She's a princess, actually," Eli said, signaling the serving bot to ignore them. "And she's the only reason we're not all dead yet." Mia's humor evaporated. She leaned in, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Look, Eli, it's bad out there. Worse than the news says. The executives, the director, they're gone." Eli froze. "What do you mean, gone?" "Evacuated," Mia said, quietly. "Shuttles have been lifting off from the corporate pad all morning, taking the VIPs up to the orbital station. They're leaving the skeleton crew and the families behind. They know something is coming." "They know the reactor is going to blow," Eli said. "Mia, look at this." He slid a data pad across the table. It contained the summary of the files Astra had decrypted. Mia read it. Her face went pale beneath the grime. Her hands started to shake. "Reactor failure," she whispered. "Those bastards. My sister works in the cooling control room. They're going to kill her." "Not if we stop them," Lyra said, intense and quiet. "But we cannot do it alone. We need the people to know." "You want to start a riot?" Mia asked, looking up. "I want to start a resistance," Eli corrected. "Can you get people together? People we can trust?" Mia looked at the data pad, then at Eli, then at the alien princess. She took a deep breath and drained her glass. "The loading dock in Warehouse 4, she said. "Give me an hour. I'll get the crew." Warehouse 4 was a cavernous space filled with shipping containers and the smell of rust. It was raining outside, the sound hammering against the metal roof like gunfire. 30 people had gathered, miners, dock workers, engineers, rough people with tired faces. They looked at Lyra with a mixture of fear and curiosity as she stood on a crate, her hood thrown back, her violet markings glowing faintly in the dim light. Eli projected the holographic evidence onto the side of a container. Kale's face, the orders, the flight plans. The reaction was a wave of noise, denial first, then anger. "They wouldn't," a burly miner shouted. "A helix squeezes us, sure, but they wouldn't nuke us." "The evidence is right there," Mia yelled back. "Look at the evacuation logs. Why do you think Saavedra is sipping cocktails in orbit while we're down here in the mud?" "It's her!" another voice shouted, a woman in a faded flight suit. She pointed an accusatory finger at Lyra. "The alien! They're coming for her! If we hand her over, maybe they'll spare us. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Desperation was a powerful motivator, and Lyra was the easy answer. She is the reason they are coming, the woman shouted, stepping forward. Give her to the fleet. Tell Kale we want no part of this. Lyra stood stoic in the face of their hostility, her chin high. But Eli saw the way her hands trembled at her sides. He stepped in front of her, his voice booming over the rain. You think that will save you? Eli roared. You think Regent Kale is going to pat you on the head and say good job? He wants this colony gone. He wants the land, not the people. Handing her over just saves him the trouble of hunting her down after he burns this place to glass. How do we know? The miner challenged. How do we know she isn't lying to save her own skin? Because she came back, Eli shouted, gesturing at Lyra. She could have run. Her ship has an FTL drive. She could have left us to rot days ago, but she stayed. She risked her life to get this proof. She's standing here, unarmed, in a room full of people who want to sell her out, because she believes you deserve a fighting chance. The room went silent. The shame of it hung heavy in the air. We have a plan, Eli said, lowering his voice. But we need time, and we need you to be ready to fight when the truth comes out. The meeting broke up in uneasy mutters. They didn't have an army, but they had a seed of doubt, and sometimes that was enough. But back at the Sirena, the tension that had been holding them together snapped. Lyra paced the command deck, stripping off the heavy cloak and throwing it to the floor. They were right, she said, her voice tight and brittle. Those people. They were right. They were scared, Eli said, closing the hatch. They aren't thinking straight. They are thinking logically, Lyra spun on him. I am the catalyst. Kyle is coming for me. If I surrender, if I offer myself as a prisoner in exchange for a ceasefire. Stop, Eli said warningly. I can hail the fleet, she continued, her eyes frantic. I can broadcast a surrender on all frequencies. I will tell Kale I have destroyed the data. I will tell him I will go quietly if he spares the colony. He won't spare them, Eli yelled, crossing the distance between them. How many times do I have to say it? Tyrants don't trade. Lyra, they take. You give him yourself, and he laughs and pushes the button anyway. I have to try, Lyra shouted back. I cannot stand here and watch 10,000 people burn because I was too cowardly to face my fate. It's not cowardice to survive. Eli grabbed her wrist, stopping her pacing. It's not noble to throw your life away for a monster who doesn't care. It is my duty. She tried to yank her arm away, but he held fast. She grabbed the collar of his jacket with her free hand, shaking him. You do not understand. I am of the High House. My life belongs to my people. If my death buys them even a chance of safety, I must pay it. Your life belongs to you, Eli shouted, his face inches from hers. And I am not going to let you throw it into the garbage. I am not going to let him touch you. Why? Lyra cried, her voice cracking. Why do you care so much? I am an alien. I am a stranger. Why does it matter to you if I die? Because you matter to me, Eli yelled. The words hung in the air, vibrating like a struck gong. They froze. Eli was gripping her wrist. Lyra was gripping his collar. They were chest to chest, breathing hard, the anger and the fear boiling over into something else entirely. The psychic bond, which had been a low hum all day, suddenly flooded. It wasn't a trickle, it was a dam breaking. Eli felt her terror. Yes, but beneath it he felt her desperate, aching loneliness. He felt the image she was trying to suppress, an image of him. She was imagining what it would feel like to stop fighting, to just collapse into him, to let his arms hold her up. She wanted him to stop her. She wanted him to save her from her own martyrdom. And Lyra felt him. She felt the sheer, overwhelming protective fury in his chest. But more than that, she felt the way he saw her. He didn't see a princess. He didn't see a diplomat. He saw Lyra. He saw the way her eyes crinkled when she was confused. He saw the strength in her spine and the softness in her hands. He felt a desire so strong it nearly knocked the wind out of her, a need to pull her close and never ever let her go. The silence between them was electric. The air felt thick, charged with ozone and pheromones. Eli's grip on her wrist loosened, sliding up her arm to cup the back of her neck. Lyra's hand on his collar relaxed, her fingers brushing against the pulse point of his throat. Lyra. Eli breathed. She made a small, broken sound in her throat. They moved at the same time. It wasn't gentle, it was a collision. Eli pulled her in, and Lyra met him halfway. Their mouths met in a kiss that was desperate, angry, and terrifyingly hungry. It tasted of rain and adrenaline. It was the release of days of terror, the breaking of every rule and taboo she had ever known. Lyra gasped against his lips, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. The bond screamed with feedback, pleasure, shock, and a profound sense of rightness that terrified her more than the fleet. For a moment, the world narrowed down to the heat of his body and the taste of his mouth. Then, the reality of what she was doing crashed back in. She tore herself away, gasping, stumbling back against the console. Her chest was heaving, her lips were swollen. The bioluminescence on her face was flaring wildly, betraying her chaotic state. I cannot, she whispered, her voice shaking. Eli, if we do this, if I let myself feel this. She looked at him with devastating vulnerability. I will not be able to choose duty. I will choose you. And I cannot be that selfish. Eli stood there, looking at her, his own breathing ragged. He reached out a hand, but he didn't cross the distance. Loving someone isn't selfish. Lyra, it's the reason we fight. Before she could answer, the comms panel on the wall chirped. Hey, lovebirds. Mia's voice crackled through the speakers, dry and sarcastic. I hate to interrupt the interspecies diplomatic relations, but unless you guys are planning to save the galaxy with cuddles, we have a problem. The tension in the room shattered. Lyra let out a startled, half-hysterical laugh, covering her face with her hands. Eli groaned, rubbing the back of his neck, his face burning. Mia, Eli said, his voice cracking. Your timing is impeccable, as always. Yeah, well, I try, Mia drawled. Look, I've been running the numbers on that planetary shield idea you mentioned. It's crazy. It's impossible. But if we route the power through the jungle's biogrid, it might just work. Lyra straightened up. She took a deep breath, forcing the royal mask back into place, though her eyes kept flicking to Eli's lips. The shield, she said. Yes, we must focus. She walked to the tactical table, putting the width of the room between them. The Sirena has a deflector array. It is designed to shield the ship. But if we amplify the signal using the varying biotech rooted in the planet, we could theoretically project a bubble around the entire colony. A planetary shield, Eli said, stepping up to the table, keeping his hands strictly to himself. It would stop the bombardment. Kale's ships wouldn't be able to fire through it. Exactly, Lyra said. It forces a stalemate. If they cannot destroy the colony instantly, they lose the element of surprise, and it gives Mia time. Time to broadcast, Eli realized. If the shield is up, we can use the array to blast that evidence on every frequency. Earth, Varen, the whole galaxy will see what Kale is doing. But there is a cost, Lyra said softly. She tapped the console. A warning graphic appeared, a red schematic of a neural interface. The computational load required to synchronize the ship with the entire jungle ecosystem is immense, she explained. Astra cannot handle it alone. The variables are too organic. It requires a biological processor, a living mind. You, Eli said, I must merge with the core. Lyra said, fully, deeper than I have ever gone. I must become the brain of the network. And the risk? Eli asked, though he saw it in her eyes. Burnout, Lyra admitted, but my mind could be absorbed. I might not be able to separate from the ship again, or the strain could simply stop my heart. No, Eli said immediately. Absolutely not, when we find another way. There is no other way, Lyra cried. The fleet arrives in 2 days. This is the only chance to save them. Then I'll do it, Eli said. Lyra stared at him. What? Plug me in, Eli said. I'm a pilot and I have a neural interface for the mech suits and it's crude, but it works. You are human, Lyra said. Your physiology is not compatible. The interface would fry your synapses in seconds. Then we share it, Eli said. He stepped closer to her again. You said Astra flagged us as compatible. You said the bond is strong. If the load is too heavy for one person, let me carry half. Lyra looked at him with horror. Eli, you do not understand what you are asking. A dual neural link. Deep merging. She swallowed hard, her face flushing. In my culture, this is not just a tactical maneuver. It is the right of union. It is reserved for life partners, bondmates. It is the deepest intimacy two beings can share. To do this with an alien, it is a taboo worse than treason. It binds our minds, forever. You would never be alone in your head again. Eli didn't flinch. He didn't look away. I don't care about your taboos, he said softly. And I don't care about the politics. I care about you. I'm not letting you do this alone. If you burn, I burn. He reached out and took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. I've been alone in my head for a long time, Lyra, he said. I think I could use the company. Lyra looked down at their joined hands. She thought of the cold perfection of the High Court. She thought of the loneliness of her exile. And then she felt the warmth of his palm, the stubborn, reckless love radiating from his mind. She made her choice. She looked up, her golden eyes shining with tears. You are a fool, Eli Navarro, she whispered. I know. Eli smiled. Then, she said, squeezing his hand tight, let us break every rule in the galaxy together. She turned to the console. Astra, prepare the neural bed. Initiate the dual link protocol. Override safety warnings. Acknowledged, Astra replied, her voice sounding almost pleased. Protocol Forbidden Union initiated. Good luck, Highborn. Good luck, Eli. The lights in the ship dimmed, focusing on the crystalline bed in the center of the room. It hummed with power, waiting. Eli and Lyra stood side by side, the silence of the ship heavy around them. But the fear was gone. There was only the resolve of two people who had decided that if the world was going to end, they were going to face it standing together. The space above Caldera 3 did not simply darken. It shattered. One moment, the orbital high anchor was a quiet vacuum of starlight and drifting communication buoys. The next, the fabric of reality tore open in a violent kaleidoscope of violet and white Cherenkov radiation. The Varan fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel with the displacement mass of small moons. The flagship Vengeance led the formation, a predator made of black durasteel and Gothic spires. 5 kilometers long and bristling with weapons batteries that unfolded like the wings of a waking dragon. Flanking it were 4 destroyer escorts. Sleek and predatory, their engine signatures burning a hateful red against the black. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Regent Kale stood before the panoramic viewing wall. He was a mountain of a man, his skin the texture of weathered granite, his ceremonial armor etched with the history of conquests he had led. "Status," Kale rumbled, his voice vibrating through the deck plating. "Orbit achieved," the flight commander reported, his face pale in the glow of the tactical displays. "We have a lock on the colonial settlement. Helix Command signals readiness. They are initiating the containment protocols." Kale looked down at the blue-green jewel of the planet. It looked fragile, breakable. "Excellent," Kale said. "Signal the gunnery crews. Prepare for orbital bombardment on my command. We will burn the infection out before it spreads." Down on the surface, the air raid sirens began to wail. It was a sound that Eli Navarro knew in his bones, a rising and falling scream that meant death was coming from the sky. But in the colony of Caldera 3, the panic was being carefully managed. Helix security teams, wearing full riot gear, herded civilians through the rain-slick streets. "This is a mandatory evacuation drill," the loudspeakers blared. "Please proceed to the designated safety zones immediately. Do not panic. Compliance is mandatory." But the safety zones were not bunkers. They were open plazas clustered dangerously close to the primary fusion reactor. They were corrals. Eli saw it all on the monitors inside the Serena's command deck, but the images felt distant, like a dream he was watching through a foggy window. His reality had narrowed down to the room, the hum of the ship, and the woman lying next to him. The central chamber of the Starship was bathed in a rhythmic, bioluminescent pulse. The crystalline neural bed was wide and cold, humming with a frequency that made Eli's teeth ache. He lay on his back, staring up at the vaulted ceiling that looked like the inside of a rib cage. Beside him lay Lyra. She had stripped off the heavy cloak and the combat armor, wearing only a thin white shift that left her arms and collarbone bare. The markings on her skin were not just glowing, they were blazing, shifting in patterns that matched the heartbeat of the ship. "Initiating dual-link sequence." Astra's voice filled the room. It sounded softer than usual, almost reverent. "Neural synchronization at 0. Warning. Psychosomatic feedback will be intense. Do not fight the current. Let it pull you under." Fine. Translucent filaments, like glowing optical fibers, descended from the ceiling. They coiled around Eli's wrists, his ankles, and his chest. They brushed against his temples, cool and living. He turned his head to look at Lyra. She was already looking at him. Her golden eyes were wide, filled with a terror she was trying desperately to hide. "Eli," she whispered, "once we cross this threshold, there is no closing the door, and you will see everything. The things I am ashamed of. The things I fear." "Good," Eli said, reaching out to take her hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was iron tight. "No more secrets, princess, just us." "Just us," she echoed. "Link engaging in 3, 2, 1. The world went white. It wasn't a fade to black. It was an explosion of light. Eli felt a sensation like falling backwards off a cliff. But instead of hitting the ground, he hit Lyra. The barrier between their minds dissolved. It was not like the brief, accidental touches they had shared before. This was a flood. Eli gasped, his back arching off the crystal bed as her consciousness poured into him. He was no longer just Eli Navarro. He was a child walking through the Hall of Ancestors on the Varen homeworld, the air freezing cold, the weight of a heavy golden crown making his neck ache. He felt the crushing pressure of 1,000 eyes watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. He felt the loneliness of a girl who was told that emotion was a weakness and that friends were potential liabilities. He felt the moment she realized her uncle was a monster. The betrayal. The knife twisting in her gut, sharper than any physical wound, and Lyra was drowning in him. She saw the sky of Earth, blue and wide. She felt the recoil of a rifle against her shoulder. She smelled the mud of Sepulchre 4 and heard the screams of men dying for a line on a map. She felt the hollow, grinding emptiness of his life after the war. The way he drove himself into the unknown because he didn't know how to live among people anymore. But beneath the trauma, beneath the history, they found the fire. The bond became intensely, overwhelmingly intimate. Lyra felt, with a clarity that made her spirit tremble, exactly how much he wanted her. It wasn't the respectful distance of a guard or the calculated alliance of a politician. It was raw. It was a hunger to know her, to hold her, to be the one thing in the universe that stood between her and the dark. She felt his reverence for her strength, but also his desperate need for her softness. And Eli felt her desire. He felt the way she had looked at him in the market, not as a primitive, but as a man who made her feel safe. He felt her craving to be stripped of her titles, to be just a woman in his arms. He felt her terror that if she let herself love him, she would destroy him, because everything she touched turned to ash. No. Eli's thought cut through the chaos, clear and strong. You don't destroy things. You save them. I am afraid. Lyra's voice echoed in his mind, sounding like a bell ringing in a canyon. I know, Eli answered. Hold on to me. Their desires, long suppressed by duty and circumstance, surged to the surface. Mental images flashed between them, waking up together in a bed with white sheets. Sunlight streaming in, no war, no fleet, just the slow, lazy warmth of a Sunday morning. The phantom sensation of skin on skin, of breath on necks, of a closeness that erased the boundaries of species and status. But they could not get lost in it. The fleet was above them. The fire was coming. Focus, Lyra commanded, though her mental voice shook with the effort. Channel it. Use the emotion. The ship runs on bioenergy. Feed it. They took that raw, terrified love and they poured it into the ship. Outside, in the physical world, the jungle woke up. It started as a tremor. The massive trees surrounding the clearing began to sway. Though there was no wind, the bioluminescent veins in the leaves flared from a soft blue to a blinding white. The roots, deep underground, pulsed with light, carrying the signal from the sirena to every plant, every vine, every blade of grass for 100 miles. From the canopy, a beam of pure light shot upward. It wasn't a laser. It was an aurora. A shimmering, translucent curtain of green and gold energy rose from the jungle, spreading outward like an opening flower. It climbed higher and higher, piercing the clouds, expanding until it covered the entire colony, the surrounding forest, and the mountains beyond. In orbit, the gunnery officer on the Vengeance shouted in alarm. Energy spike detected, massive scale, it is a shield. Regent covering the target zone. Cale narrowed his eyes. A shield? From a primitive mud ball? Impossible. Fire a test volley, battery 1. The Vengeance shuddered as a turbo-laser battery discharged. A lance of red plasma, hot enough to boil an ocean, streaked down toward the planet. It hit the green aurora. There was no explosion. The plasma simply splashed against the energy field, spreading out like ripples across a pond, dissipating into harmless sparks of light that dazzled the night sky. On the ground, the colonists huddled in the fake safety zones looked up. They stopped screaming. They stared, open-mouthed, at the sky where the death blow had turned into a light show. Inside the ship, Lyra screamed. The physical strain was horrific. Her body arched on the bed, muscles seizing. The feedback from the shield impact hit her mind like a physical hammer blow. It is too heavy. She gasped in the shared mind space. The lattice. It is tearing me apart. Eli felt her pain as if it were his own. He felt the edges of her consciousness beginning to fray, dissolving into the white noise of the machine. She was slipping away. She was accepting it. This is the price, her thought whispered, faint and fading. I am the heir. I must pay for the sins of my house. Let me go. Eli, I can hold it if I give everything. No! Eli slammed his mental presence against hers, an anchor dropping into the storm. You are not a sacrifice, he shouted into the void. You are Lyra. Stay with me. He grabbed her drifting consciousness and pulled. He didn't use logic. He used memories. He forced her to relive the moment in the market, the taste of the spicy chicken, the way she had looked at him when the music started, the awkward, beautiful stumble of their dance. Look at this, he demanded, projecting the memory of her laughing at his terrible joke about the coffee. This is real. This is you. You are not just a crown. You are the woman who laughed in the rain. You are the woman I love. The word hung there, powerful and absolute. Love. Lyra stopped fading. The admission acted like a shot of adrenaline to her soul. She latched onto him, onto the warmth of his mind, and pulled herself back from the brink. Eli. She breathed. I am here. Then fight, Eli snarled. Together. While the lovers held the sky up, the revolution began on the ground. Mia kicked open the door to the Colonial Communications Hub, a heavy wrench in her hand. Behind her were 20 armed colonists, miners with laser cutters, dock workers with pry bars, and a few defecting Helix security guards who had seen the evacuation shuttles leaving without them. Technically, Mia shouted over the alarm klaxons, this voids the warranty on the door lock. Clear the room, a miner yelled, waving a makeshift stun baton. The Helix technicians inside didn't put up a fight. They were just as scared as everyone else. They raised their hands and backed away from the consoles. Mia slid into the main operator's chair. Okay, Astra, you hearing me? Connection established. The AI's voice came through the hub speakers. The shield is holding, but strain levels are critical. You have a window of 12 minutes before the Highborn's neural pathways degrade. 12 minutes to destroy an empire, Mia muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. No pressure. Uploading the package now. She hit the enter key with a flourish. Let's see how they like their customer service now. The broadcast went out on every frequency. It hijacked the Colonial news feed. It overrode the Helix corporate channels. It punched through the jamming of the Varan fleet. Screens all over the sector flickered and changed. There was the video of Regent Kale ordering the massacre. There were the signed documents. There were the logs of Helix executives calculating the acceptable loss of life in dollars and cents. On the bridge of the Vengeance, the main view screen shifted from the tactical map to the face of Regent Kale himself, sneering as he spoke of sterilizing the colony. The bridge crew went silent. Every officer, every ensign, turned to look at the real Kale, standing on the command deck. Lies! Kale roared, his face turning a dark, furious violet. Cut the feed! Jam that signal! We cannot... Regent! The communications officer stammered. It is embedded in the carrier wave. It is everywhere. Sir, the weapons commander said, his voice hard. The order. You said it was a rebel uprising. You said we were saving them. I am the Regent, Kale bellowed, drawing his sidearm. I am the law. Fire the main batteries. Burn through that shield. Obliterate them. The weapons commander looked at the screen, where the video showed Kale laughing about the deaths of children. He looked back at his regent, slowly, deliberately. The commander took his hands off the firing console. System error, the commander said flatly. Weapons failing to respond. Mutiny? Kale hissed, spit flying from his lips. You dare? I dare to keep my oath, Regent, the commander said. We protect the Dominion. We do not butcher it for profit. Kyle looked around the bridge. He saw the same look in every pair of eyes. Disgust. Betrayal. He was losing them. Fine, Kyle snarled. If you are too weak to do what must be done, I will do it myself. He turned and stormed off the bridge, heading for the hangar bay. Regent, an aide shouted. Where are you going? To finish it, Kyle screamed. Prepare my personal shuttle, I am going to the surface. Down in the jungle, the air was screaming. Kale's shuttle, a sleek, arrow-shaped interceptor, punched through the atmosphere. He pushed the engines to critical, diving straight for the source of the shield energy, the clearing. He hit the shield just as it was fluctuating, punching through the semi-solid barrier with a deafening boom. The impact tore one of the shuttle's wings off, sending it spiraling down toward the jungle canopy. It crashed 200 meters from the Sirena, carving a scar of fire through the trees. The ramp blew open before the smoke cleared. Kale emerged, wearing powered combat armor, a heavy pulse rifle in his hand. Behind him stumbled his personal guard, 6 elite Varan Marines and a squad of Helix mercenaries who were paid too much to have a conscience. Find the ship, Kale ordered, his voice amplified by his helmet. Kill everyone! Burn it to the ground! They charged into the jungle, but the jungle was waiting. As the soldiers stepped into the tree line, the ground seemed to liquefy. Vines as thick as pythons whipped out of the shadows, wrapping around ankles and dragging mercenaries screaming into the undergrowth. Contact! Contact right! A Marine shouted, firing blindly into the trees. Bioluminescent spores exploded from pods on the branches, creating clouds of blinding, glittering dust. The soldiers choked, their visors gummed up with glowing slime. Astra! Eli shouted in the mind link. Defense protocols, now! Tiny drones, disguised as hummingbirds and beetles, swarmed from the trees. They darted between the armor plates of the Marines, delivering localized electromagnetic shocks that locked their suits' servos. But Kale was a force of nature. He waded through the chaos, his power armor tearing vines apart. He fired his pulse rifle with brutal precision, blasting trees into splinters, burning a path straight to the Sirena. He reached the clearing. The ship lay before him, pulsing with light. Lyra! Kale roared, his voice shaking the hull. Come out and die like a highborn. He didn't wait. He aimed a breaching charge at the hatch and fired. The explosion rocked the ship. The hull screamed as it was torn open. Inside the core chamber, the world tilted. Hull breach, Astra warned. Intruder alert. Core chamber integrity compromised. Eli and Lyra were trapped on the neural bed, the filaments still connecting them. They couldn't move. To break the link now would drop the shield, exposing the colony to the fleet that was still in orbit, hovering uncertainly. He is here, Lyra whispered, feeling Kale's presence like a drop of poison in clear water. The door to the chamber blasted inward. Kale stepped through the smoke, a giant in black metal. He looked at the two of them, the human and the princess, bound together by glowing wires lying side by side. His face twisted in a rictus of disgust. Look at you, Kale spat, leveling his rifle. Staining the royal blood with a primitive animal. You are an abomination. Lyra. Eli struggled, trying to rip the filaments off his chest, but his limbs felt like lead. A stray blast from the door breach had caught him in the leg. Blood was soaking into his trousers. Stay back, Eli gritted out, putting his body between Kale and Lyra. You think you can stop me? Kale laughed, a dark, wet sound. I have a fleet. I have an empire. You have a broken ship and a dream. Lyra looked at her uncle. She felt his hate washing over her. And in that moment, she saw a way out. Eli, she thought, her mind cold and sharp. The Red Protocol. What? The bioweapon, she explained. The knowledge flowing from the ship's memory into his. The Sirena carries a dormant payload, a genetic phage designed to target Varan biology. It corrupts the interface tech we use. She looked at the console. She could trigger it with a thought. It would kill him, she thought. It would kill the Marines. It would surge up the data link to the fleet in orbit. It would infect the life support systems. It would kill every Varan crew member on those ships. It was the ultimate justice, the end of the threat, the end of the empire that had hunted her. She reached out with her mind, grasping the code for the weapon. "No!" Eli screamed in her head. He dragged himself up on one elbow, ignoring the agony in his leg. He looked at her, his eyes desperate. "Lyra, don't!" he shouted aloud, his voice raw. "He is going to kill us, Eli!" Lyra cried, tears streaming down her face. "He is going to kill everyone. I can stop him. I can end it all right now." "By becoming him," Eli pleaded. "That weapon kills thousands. The crews on those ships, they just refuse to fire on the colony. They aren't monsters. He is." Cale took a step closer, the rifle whining as it charged. "Say your goodbyes, traitor." "Lyra, look at me." Eli grabbed her face with his bloody hand. "Power without compassion is what he is. That's what Cale is. If you kill them all to save yourself, you are just another tyrant sitting on a throne of bones. Be the queen you are supposed to be. Be better." Lyra froze. She looked at Cale, the man who had murdered her father, the man who wanted to burn a world. She held the power of a god in her mind. She could snuff him out like a candle, but she felt Eli's heart beating against hers. She felt his belief in her, not in her power, but in her soul. She made her choice. She grabbed the code for the bioweapon, and she twisted it. Astra, she commanded. Targeting parameters, non-biological. Frequency, tech bane. Target weapons and propulsion only. Execute. "No!" Cale shouted, sensing the energy shift. He pulled the trigger. The blast hit Eli in the shoulder, spinning him around. He collapsed onto the bed. "Eli!" Lyra screamed, but the pulse was already gone. An invisible wave of energy erupted from the Sirena. It passed through Cale. It passed through the jungle. It shot up into orbit. It didn't hurt flesh, but it tore through circuits. Cale's power armor seized. The servos locked up with a screech of tortured metal. His rifle sparked and died. The lights on his suit went dark. He was trapped in a coffin of dead weight. In orbit, the Vengeance and her escorts went dark. Engines died. Weapon ports closed. They drifted, powerless, silent ghosts against the stars. Kyle struggled, roaring in fury, trapped in his own armor. "What have you done? What have you done?" Lyra ripped the filaments from her temples. She didn't look at her uncle. She crawled over to Eli. "Eli," she sobbed, pressing her hands to his bleeding shoulder. "Eli, stay with me." Eli blinked, his eyes losing focus. He looked up at her and managed a weak, bloody smile. Did we get him?" "We got him," Lyra whispered, kissing his forehead. "We got him, you stubborn, foolish human." Behind them, the sound of boots on metal echoed. Cale's own Marines stumbled into the room, their armor functioning on backup emergency power, their weapons lowered. They looked at their regent, frozen and screaming in his suit. They looked at the princess, cradling the human who had saved them all. The lead Marine, the same one who had fired the shot, walked forward. He looked at Kyle. "Get me out of this," Kyle ordered. "Kill them." The Marine looked at Lyra. He slowly went to one knee, bowing his head. "Highborn," the Marine said. "The fleet is silent. The broadcast. We saw it. We await your command." Lyra looked at the soldier. She looked at Kale, who was suddenly very small and very mortal inside his metal shell. "Arrest him," Lyra said, her voice cold and regal. "And get a medic, now." The silence that fell over Caldera 3 was heavier than the bombardment that had preceded it. It was not the silence of peace, but the held breath of a predator that had suddenly realized it was no longer at the top of the food chain. High above the atmosphere, the Varan fleet drifted. The massive dreadnoughts and razor-thin destroyers, once terrifying instruments of imperial will, were now simply dead weight. Their engines were cold, their weapon ports sealed, and their running lights flickered on emergency backup power. They looked like steel whales beached on the shores of a cosmic ocean, waiting for the tide to turn. Down on the surface, the war had transitioned from plasma fire to paperwork. The negotiations took place on the neutral ground of an orbital cargo hauler, the Indefatigable, which had been hastily requisitioned as a diplomatic station. The air inside the cargo bay smelled of recycled oxygen and industrial lubricant, a fitting scent for the messy business of dismantling a conspiracy. A provisional council sat around a table made of shipping crates covered in a tarp. On one side sat the senior officers of the Varan fleet, men and women in pristine, albeit powerless armor, looking uncomfortable and humiliated. On the other side sat the unexpected victors, a group of muddy, exhausted colonial leaders led by Mia, and hovering above the center of the table, projected from the Serena's secure comms array, was Lyra. She was not physically present. She was still deep in the jungle, tending to Eli, but her image was life-sized and high definition. She wore no crown, no ceremonial robes. She wore a simple flight suit, and the bandages were gone from her face, leaving her violet bioluminescent markings exposed for all to see. "The terms are not negotiable," Lyra said. Her voice, transmitted from the heart of the jungle, was calm, but carried the weight of a gavel strike. "Regent Kale is in custody. The evidence of his crimes and the complicity of the Helix Board has been broadcast to the core worlds. The war he sought to manufacture is over before it began." Across the table, a Helix executive named Mr. Sterling, a man whose suit cost more than the entire cargo hauler, mopped sweat from his forehead. "Now, let us not be hasty." "Highborn," Sterling said, his smile twitching. Director Saavedra was a rogue element, a bad apple. The board had no knowledge of these specific, aggressive protocols. "We are victims here as well. We are prepared to offer a generous settlement to the colony. Perhaps a 5% reduction in resource tithes for the next fiscal quarter." Mia laughed. It was a loud, harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the crates. 5%? Mia asked. "You tried to nuke us, Sterling. You tried to turn my home into a parking lot for your new empire. You aren't giving us a discount. You're giving us the keys." "I beg your pardon?" Sterling blinked. "Reparations," Mia said, sliding a datapad across the table. "Full autonomy for Caldera 3. Helix forfeits all mining rights. You pull your security forces out by sunset tomorrow, and you leave the infrastructure, the reactors, the medical bays, the comms arrays. They belong to us now. Consider it a late fee for the attempted genocide." "This is preposterous," Sterling sputtered, looking to the Varan officers for support. "Admiral, surely you cannot allow these laborers to dictate terms to a galactic corporation." The Varan fleet admiral, a stern woman named Terrell with scars running down her neck, looked at Sterling with cold, reptilian eyes. She had seen the broadcast. She had seen the orders Kale had signed. "My fleet is currently disabled by a single ship hidden in a swamp," Admiral Torrell said dryly. "And my regent is currently being held prisoner by a tree." I am in no position to dictate anything, Mr. Sterling, and frankly, after seeing what you and Cale planned, I would suggest you sign the woman's paper before she decides to ask for your head instead of your mine." Mia grinned, spinning a stylus between her fingers. "You heard the lady. Sterling, sign it, and don't worry about the pen. It's on the house." There was a moment of tension, broken only by the hum of the ventilation fans. Then, defeated, Sterling picked up the stylus. "And one more thing," Mia added, glancing at the translator droid hovering near the Admiral. "Tell your guys to stop calling us primitive bipeds on the open comms. It's rude. We prefer the people who kicked your ass. It has a better ring to it, don't you think?" The translator droid whirred, confused. The phrase "kicked your ass" does not have a direct analog in High Varen, approximating the people who surgically removed your dignity. Admiral Terrell actually cracked a smile. "Noted, Councilwoman, noted." While the fate of the colony was being decided in orbit, the heart of the Resistance was recovering in the silence of the jungle. Inside the Sirena, the air was warm and smelled of ozone and healing moss. The command deck had been transformed into a sanctuary. The jagged hole in the hull where Cale had breached the ship was sealed with a temporary biomesh, glowing softly as it knit the metal bone back together. Eli lay on the central neural bed. The hard crystals had softened, molding to his body like memory foam. A cocoon of amber light surrounded him, accelerating his cell regeneration. The blast from Cale's rifle had been a glancing blow, but it had burned deep. He opened his eyes. The pain was gone, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache in his shoulder. Lyra was sitting on the floor beside the bed, her back resting against the pedestal. She was asleep. Her head was tipped forward, her dark hair falling over her face. She looked impossibly young. The imperious princess who had pointed a spear at his chest was gone. In her place was a tired woman who had carried the weight of 2 worlds on her shoulders for too long. Eli shifted, the movement making the light cocoon ripple. Lyra woke instantly. Her head snapped up, her golden eyes wide and alert. When she saw him moving, the tension drained from her frame, and she let out a long, shaky breath. "You are awake," she said softly. "I think so," Eli croaked. "Unless this is the afterlife. If it is, the decor is a little weird. Very organic." Lyra smiled, a genuine, tired smile that reached her eyes. She stood up and leaned over him, placing a cool hand on his forehead. "Fever is down. The tissue is knitting. Astra says you will have full mobility in 3 days, though you will have a new scar to add to your collection." "Chicks dig scars," Eli muttered, then winced. "Sorry. Old habit. Marines say stupid things when they're scared." "Were you scared?" Lyra asked, her thumb tracing the line of his jaw. "Terrified," Eli admitted. "I thought he had you. When he walked through that door, I didn't think we were walking out." "We almost did not," Lyra said darkly. She looked away, her gaze drifting to the spot where her uncle had been restrained. "I almost killed them. Eli. All of them. The weapon was in my hand. I could feel the death of thousands waiting for a single thought." "But you didn't do it," Eli said, and he reached up, taking her hand and pulling her closer. "That's what matters. You chose the hard way. The right way. Because of you," she whispered. "You anchored me when the hate was drowning me. I heard your voice." She sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the healing field. "The fleet is standing down. Cale is being transported to the flagship brig. A provisional council has been formed." "So it's over," Eli said. "The battle is over," Lyra corrected. "The war for peace is just beginning. The Dominion is shattered. The revelation of Kale's crimes has caused chaos in the core worlds. The government will need to be rebuilt, reformed. She paused, looking down at their joined hands. They are calling for me, Eli, the loyalists, the reformers. They say I am the symbol of the new way, the queen who refused to be a tyrant. Eli felt a cold stone drop in his stomach. He knew this was coming. He had known it since the moment the shield went up. You have to go back, he said. It wasn't a question. I must, Lyra said. It is my duty. If I stay here, hiding in the jungle, another Kale will rise. I must take the throne. I must ensure that the treaty Mia is writing becomes law, not just paper. Eli nodded slowly. He looked at the ceiling, fighting the sudden stinging in his eyes. Well, it was a hell of a ride, Princess. I guess you'll need a ride to the spaceport. Eli, Lyra said sharply. She squeezed his hand hard enough to hurt. Do not be an idiot. Eli looked at her. What? I am not leaving you, she said. Her voice was fierce, trembling with emotion. Do you think I can go back to that cold palace alone? Do you think I can sit on that throne without the man who taught me what it means to be a leader? She took a deep breath, her violet cheeks flushing. I am offering you a position, Eli Navarro, not as a scout, not as a subject. She looked him dead in the eye. I am asking you to come with me as my bondmate, my consort, my co-pilot. Eli stared at her. The silence in the ship was absolute. A bondmate, he repeated, the Lyra. You're talking about, that's marriage. That's more than marriage. That's forever. I'm a human. I'm a grunt from the mud. Your people will lose their minds. They'll say you're polluting the bloodline. Let them say it, Lyra said, her chin lifting with that royal defiance he loved so much. Let them be shocked. Let them see that the old ways are dead. We will be a bridge, Eli, a living symbol that human and Varen are not enemies, that we are compatible. Compatible, Eli chuckled, a dry, choked sound. Is that what we are? We are more than that, Lyra whispered. You are in my head. Eli, I can feel you right now. I can feel your fear. You are afraid that you will not fit in. You are afraid that the politics will swallow you. You are afraid that you are not enough for me. I'm terrified, Eli admitted, his voice cracking. I don't know how to be a royal consort. I don't know which fork to use. I don't know how to bow. I'm afraid I'll embarrass you. I'm afraid I'll hate it. Then we will hate it together, Lyra said, and we will change it. But Eli, tell me the truth. What scares you more, going with me into the unknown, or watching this ship fly away without you? Eli closed his eyes. He imagined it. He imagined standing in the clearing, watching the Serena rise into the clouds, watching the blue light fade, knowing that the other half of his soul was gone forever. The pain of that thought was sharper than any plasma burn. It was unbearable. My chest hurts, Eli whispered, just thinking about it. Mine too, Lyra said softly. Eli opened his eyes. He looked at the alien woman who had threatened to erase his mind, the woman who danced in the rain, the woman who had saved his life a dozen times over. Okay, he said. Okay. I'm in. But I have conditions. Lyra smiled, a predatory, playful quirk of her lips. Conditions? You negotiate with your queen? Damn right, Eli said. Condition 1, we keep the classic rock playlist on the bridge. Condition 2, no official dinners on Tuesdays, that's taco night. And condition 3, he pulled her down, breaking the plane of the healing field. The amber light swirled around them both. Condition 3, he whispered against her lips. You never call me subject again. Agreed, Lyra breathed. She kissed him. It wasn't like the kiss in the command center, the one born of adrenaline and desperation. This was slow. It was deep. It was acclaiming. There was no psychic interference this time, no flash of memories, no overload of shared trauma, just the physical reality of her mouth on his, her hands tangling in his hair, his good arm wrapping around her waist to pull her down onto the bed beside him. The bond in their minds hummed, but it was a quiet, contented sound. It was the sound of two instruments finally tuning to the same frequency. It vibrated with tenderness, with relief, and with a rising tide of desire that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with love. Eli shifted, making room for her on the narrow crystal bed. Lyra curled into him, her head resting on his chest, her leg tangling with his. The ship seemed to dim its lights in response, the bioluminescence fading to a soft, intimate twilight. You should not be here, Eli whispered into her hair, teasing her with her own words. I am exactly where I am supposed to be, Lyra murmured against his skin. The outline of the scene faded there, leaving them in the warm, living dark of the ship. Boundaries dissolved, two lonely people who had finally found their home in each other. The next morning, the sun was streaming through the hull, which had turned transparent to let in the light, when the comms panel shrieked. Navarro, Princess, pick up! Eli groaned, burying his face in a pillow that felt like warm moss. Lyra sat up, blinking, her hair a magnificent disaster, her shift slipping off one shoulder. Answer, Lyra muttered sleepily, waving a hand at the air. The wall screen flickered to life. Mia's face filled the room, looking impatient and far too awake. Finally, Mia shouted. I've been hailing you for 20 minutes. I was about to come down there with a crowbar to pry you two apart. Eli sat up, rubbing his eyes, pulling the sheet up to his waist. Mia, do you have no concept of privacy? We are recovering from battle wounds. Recovering? Mia deadpanned, looking at Lyra's disheveled hair and the satisfied, sleepy grin on Eli's face. Right. Is that what the kids are calling it these days? Look, I don't care if you're saving the galaxy with cuddles or reinventing diplomatic relations horizontal style. We have a situation. Lyra stiffened, instantly alert. Is it the fleet? Has Kale escaped? No. Relax, Your Highness. Mia waved a hand. The fleet is docile as a puppy. The situation is that Admiral Toril and the Helix suits are waiting for the final signatures on the Accord. And they're getting nervous because the heroes of the revolution are late. We are coming, Lyra said, smoothing her hair with as much dignity as she could muster while wearing a bedsheet. Give us 1 hour. Make it 30 minutes, Mia said. And Eli? Try to cover up the hickeys. You look like you got attacked by a vacuum cleaner. The screen went black. Lyra turned to Eli, her face flushing a deep violet. Hickeys? Eli laughed, leaning over to kiss the glowing spot on her neck. It's a human idiom. It means I did a good job. The signing of the Caldera Accord was less dramatic than the battle, but far more permanent. On the flight deck of the Indefatigable, Lyra stood tall in her royal armor, cleaned and repaired by the ship's nanites, with Eli standing at her right hand. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He wore his scout jacket, cleaned and mended, with a small Varan pin on the collar, the insignia of the royal consort. The gathered crowd of colonists and soldiers watched in silence as Lyra signed the data pad. Then she handed it to Eli. For the colony, she said. Eli signed his name. For the colony. Under the terms, Helix was stripped of all administrative power. They would pay billions in reparations. The Varan forces would remain in orbit only as a protective detail, under joint command. until the new government was stabilized, and Lyra Saristhal was fully exonerated. She was recognized not as a traitor, but as the savior of the Dominion. Before they left, Eli pulled Mia aside. "You're in charge now," Eli said. "Me?" Mia laughed nervously. "I fix engines. Eli, I don't run governments." "You fixed a revolution," Eli said. "You're the only one they trust. I've appointed you as the interim governor until elections can be held. Don't screw it up." "I hate you," Mia said, but she hugged him hard. "You're coming back, right? You're not going to go full alien and forget us little people?" "I'll be back," Eli promised. "We have a lot of work to do. We're going to build a bridge between Earth and Varan, Mia, and Caldera 3 is going to be the foundation." "Get out of here, flyboy," Mia sniffed, pushing him away. "Go be a prince, or whatever." The departure was a spectacle that would be talked about on Caldera 3 for generations. The Serena did not launch like a human ship, with fire and smoke. It rose like a spirit. The anti-gravity drive hummed, a deep, resonant chord that vibrated in the chests of the thousands of people watching from the ground. As the ship climbed above the canopy, the jungle said goodbye. The bioengineered trees, sensing the departure of the central node, began to pulse. Waves of blue and green light rippled through the forest, moving in sync with the ship's ascent. The spores drifted up in a cloud of glittering diamonds, swirling around the hull. Inside the observation deck, Eli and Lyra stood side by side, watching the world fall away. The jungle became a patch of green. The colony became a speck of gray. The curve of the planet revealed itself, a blue marble hanging in the black. "It is beautiful," Lyra whispered. "It is," Eli agreed. "I almost died there about 5 times. "Only 5? Lyra teased. "I counted at least 7. "I'm optimizing the narrative," Eli grinned. The ship's AI spoke one last time before the jump. "Course laid in for Varan Prime. FTL drive charged. Ready to jump on your mark. Highborn." Lyra looked at Eli. "Ready?" Eli looked at the stars. They didn't look cold anymore. They looked like a destination. "Punch it, Astra," Eli said. The stars stretched into lines of white fire, and the Sirena vanished, leaving only a ripple in the fabric of space. 6 months later, the jungle of Caldera 3 was no longer a forbidden zone. The ghost lights were no longer feared. They were the street lights for the new expansion. A group of new colonial recruits sat in a circle in the clearing, the same clearing where Eli had first found the ship. The grass was still silver. The air still hummed with a faint residual energy. Sitting on a log, wearing a suit that was a strange but stylish mix of human denim and Varan silk, sat Eli Navarro. "So there I was," Eli was saying, leaning forward, his voice hushed. "Completely surrounded, 6 shadow jaguars on my left, a platoon of invisible hunter-killers on my right, and my machete was broken." The recruits leaned in, eyes wide. "And then," Eli continued, "the hatch opens, and out steps this woman, 7 feet tall, eyes like lasers. She points a cannon at my head and says, 'Surrender, Earthling, or I will disintegrate your atoms.'" "That is not what happened," a melodious voice cut in. The recruits jumped. Walking out of the tree line was Lyra. She looked regal, radiant, and very much in charge. She carried a basket of fruit, looking absurdly domestic for a galactic ruler. "I said, 'You shouldn't be here,'" Lyra corrected, sitting down next to Eli and handing him a piece of fruit. "And I did not have a cannon. I had a spear. And you were not surrounded by jaguars. You were surrounded by very angry mosquitoes." The recruits laughed. "Details, details." Eli waved a hand, taking a bite of the fruit. The point is, I was in trouble, and she was trouble, and we were both exactly where we weren't supposed to be. He put his arm around Lyra, pulling her close. She leaned her head on his shoulder, the gesture natural and easy. Above them, the Aurora shield shimmered faintly in the daylight, no longer a wall to keep people out, but a roof to keep them safe. But that's the thing about maps, Eli told the recruits looking at the woman he loved. Sometimes you have to walk off the edge to find out where you really belong. Lyra smiled, closing her eyes as the jungle breeze played with her hair. The ship, parked invisibly above the tree line, gave a soft, happy hum that vibrated in the ground beneath their feet. Class dismissed, Eli said softly. The recruits scrambled away, leaving them alone in the quiet, living heart of the world that had brought them together. They sat there for a long time, watching the leaves sway, two travelers who had stopped running, content to just be here, together, under the same sky.